Hello, all you freedom-loving people. Tulsi Gabbard declassified a new batch of documents today, and she suggested that the evidence released directly points to Obama leading the manufacturing of the intelligence assessment, and Japan and the U.S. signed a trade deal. Okay, let's get into it. The newly declassified Crossfire Hurricane files showing that Obama knew that there was no Russia collusion in the 2016 election, and the newly declassified Hillary Clinton private email server investigation documents have undoubtedly sent shockwaves through the political world. President Trump on Tuesday said that former President Barack Obama was the ringleader of Russiagate, and he called for Obama to be criminally investigated. But a spokesperson for Obama denied President Trump's allegations in a rare public statement made on Tuesday evening. Obama's spokesperson, Patrick Rodenbush, said in a statement, "Out of respect for the office of the presidency, our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of this White House with a response, but these claims are outrageous enough to merit one. Nothing in the document issued last week undercuts the widely accepted conclusion that Russia worked to influence the 2016 presidential election, but did not successfully manipulate any votes." Obviously, this is different from what Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, has said during media interviews. Gabbard has been talking about how the documents reveal that Obama administration officials manufactured and politicized intelligence to create the narrative that Russia was attempting to influence the 2016 presidential election, despite information from the intelligence community stating otherwise. And Gabbard on Monday sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department related to those findings. There's no confirmation on whom the criminal referral was for so far, but President Trump identified President Obama as the mastermind. President Trump was asked which specific figures should be under criminal investigation, to which he replied, President Obama. He started it. On Tuesday, during a meeting with the president of the Philippines, President Trump went on to say that his administration has all of the documents, and from what Tulsi told me, she's got thousands of additional documents coming. And then Tulsi Gabbard fired back at Barack Obama's PR statement during an appearance on Fox News after Obama's statement was released.
This is the thing that I think people should pay attention to, is neither the message from President Obama's office, neither the statements coming from Democrats in Congress today and their friends in the propaganda media. None of them are addressing this fact that there was a shift, a 180-degree shift from the intelligence community's assessment leading up to the election to the one that President Obama directed be produced after Donald Trump won the election, that completely contradicted those assessments that had come previously. The second thing I want to address that's very important, Laura, is that you in the clip that you played, you saw John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey stated with high confidence this January intelligence community assessment that they drafted at the direction of President Obama. The fact is that they used already discredited information like the Steele dossier. They knew it was discredited at that time, yet they used it as a source for this document that they claim to have high confidence in. They used intelligence that some of these intelligence community professionals rejected previously because of the lack of credibility and the lack of the ability to vet with any kind of confidence whether or not that information or intelligence was accurate and could be used for an assessment.
And today, Gabbard declassified a new batch of documents. The National Intelligence website released a report that was done by the House of Representatives Intelligence Committee back on September 18th, 2020. In the report, the panel stated, "One scant, unclear, and unverifiable fragment of a sentence from one of the substandard reports constitutes the only classified information to suggest Putin aspired to help Trump win." So what was that sentence? That sentence was, Putin had made this decision to leak DNC emails after he had come to believe that the Democratic nominee had better odds of winning the U.S. presidential election, and that Trump, whose victory Putin was counting on, most likely would not be able to pull off a convincing victory. Lawmakers said officials selectively included quotes that supported their assessment of Putin's intentions while omitting contrary information and alternative viewpoints from the same reports. A senior CIA officer was quoted in the report as saying regarding the one sentence, "We don't know what was meant by that, and 5 people read it 5 ways." There was also a CIA officer who was quoted as saying, "We don't have direct information that Putin wanted to get Trump elected." Tulsi also mentioned today that if Putin wanted Trump elected, then he would have released the information that he had about Hillary.
The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts, like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency, significant increases in financing from the State Department. They also had documents that showed the patronage of the State Department to State Department employees who would go and support Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. There were high-level DNC emails that detailed evidence of Hillary's, quote, psycho-emotional problems, uncontrolled fits of anger, aggression, and cheerfulness, and that then Secretary Clinton was allegedly on a daily regimen of heavy tranquilizers. Then CIA Director Brennan and the intelligence community mischaracterized intelligence and relied on dubious substandard sources to create a contrived false narrative that Putin developed a quote-unquote clear preference for Trump.
Tulsi also clarified today that she has sent over a referral to the DOJ for criminal prosecution and that President Obama was a part of that referral.
Thank you. And Director Gabbard, this one is for you. Do you believe that any of this new information implicates former President Obama in criminal behavior?
We have referred and will continue to refer all of these documents to the Department of Justice and the FBI to investigate the criminal implications of this.
For even former President Obama?
Correct. The evidence that we have found and that we have released directly point to President Obama leading the manufacturing of this intelligence assessment. There are multiple pieces of evidence and intelligence that confirm that fact.
Ed, go ahead.
Director Gabbard, thank you. So just to...
In an interview yesterday in the Oval Office of the White House, President Trump also said that he was invited by Chinese leader Xi Jinping to visit China. So President Trump might visit China soon. He said, and will probably be doing that in the not too distant future, a little bit out, but not too distant. I've been invited by a lot of people and will be making those decisions pretty soon. If it happens, it will be President Trump's second trip to China since 2017. This potential visit comes at a critical time in the U.S.-China trade and security landscape. The U.S.-China tariff truce expires on August 12th. And Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent will travel to Sweden next week for another round of talks with China. Bessent said on Sunday that trade talks between Washington and Beijing have moved to a new level where it's very constructive and we're going to be able to get a lot of things done. The news of President Trump's visit to China has been interpreted as an indicator of the future direction of the U.S.-China relationship or changes in the situation. But there is continuing concern about whether the U.S. will make adjustments to its current tariff policy. On Tuesday, Bessent said that the U.S.-China tariff truce may be extended again depending on the outcome of next week's negotiations. He said, hopefully we can see the Chinese pull back on some of this glut of manufacturing that they're doing and concentrate on building a consumer economy. On Fox Business, Bessent said that he hopes the talks will touch on other areas of potential agreement, including discussing the sanctioned Russian and Iranian oil that they're buying there and what they're doing to aid Russia in its ongoing invasion of Ukraine. Russia relies heavily on revenues from crude oil exports to China to sustain its expenditures, and the CCP is also Iran's largest trading partner and biggest oil buyer. Bessent said that any country buying sanctioned Russian oil would face a secondary tariff of up to 100%. Bessent also said that Americans may also discuss with the Chinese the issue that everybody avoids mentioning, namely the need for the Chinese side to make a major rebalancing. The Treasury Secretary says that China accounts for 30% of the world's export manufacturing, but that figure is unlikely to grow and is likely to shrink. Shortly after Besant's remarks, China's market regulator, the State Administration for Market Regulation, issued a one-line statement that it had suspended its antitrust investigation of DuPont China Group, which is the Chinese subsidiary of U.S. chemical company DuPont. The investigation was launched in April of this year against the backdrop of the escalating trade war between the United States and China. The U.S. has made several achievements in its tariff negotiations recently, with President Trump announcing yesterday that the U.S. and Japan have reached one of the largest trade deals in their history. President Trump said at the White House, "I just signed maybe the largest deal in history. We worked on it long and hard, and it's a great deal for everybody, a lot different from the deals in the past, I can tell you that." The reciprocal tariff rate that was agreed to by both sides is set at 15%, and Japan will invest $550 billion in the United States, and America will receive 90% of the profits, which are expected to create hundreds of thousands of jobs in the United States. Japan will open its market to more U.S. goods such as cars, trucks, rice, and other agricultural products. President Trump said, "This is a very exciting time for the United States of America, and especially for the fact that we will continue to always have a great relationship with the country of Japan." Industry and government officials with knowledge of the agreement said that the deal gives Japan one major win, lowering the tariff on Japanese automobiles by 10%. And earlier on Tuesday, President Trump confirmed the details of the U.S.-Indonesia trade agreement. Under the deal, Indonesia will lower tariffs to 0% on 99% of U.S. exports and eliminate non-tariff barriers. And Indonesian products entering the United States will be subject to a reciprocal tariff rate of 19%, down from 32%. Indonesia will also supply the United States with precious critical minerals and purchase American farm products, energy, and Boeing aircraft. And regarding the Japanese deal, President Trump said, "This deal is a huge win for our automakers, tech companies, workers, farmers, ranchers, and manufacturers." At the same time, Japanese companies are adjusting their business strategies. Mitsubishi Motors announced on Tuesday that it will terminate its joint venture relationship with Chinese company Shenyang Aerospace and stop engine production in the communist country. This marks Mitsubishi's complete withdrawal from all automotive business in communist China, shifting its focus to Southeast Asia. Despite its withdrawal from the Chinese market, Mitsubishi's overall performance has not suffered. 2024 total production grew by 1.1% to exceed 1 million vehicles. Domestic sales in Japan also increased by 14.6%, with more than 100,000 vehicles delivered. Mitsubishi said that it pulled out of China because the Chinese market is rapidly shifting to electric vehicles. But another reason that was not explicitly stated would be price competition in the Chinese market. The news of Beijing's withholding of U.S. Department of Commerce personnel has shocked the American business community. Major corporations are responding in kind. Wells Fargo's measures are the most stringent. Last week, Wells Fargo was suspended employee travel to China after its managing director, Chen Yu Mao, was banned from leaving China. But the world's largest asset management company, BlackRock, has a close relationship with Chinese companies, so it cannot avoid sending its employees on business trips to China. In an internal memo obtained by Bloomberg News, BlackRock detailed policy enhancements for employees traveling to China on business. In the memo, it has asked employees traveling to China on business to use temporary loaner phones and avoid bringing company-issued devices, including laptops, iPhones, and iPads. Employees are also banned from accessing the company's network via VPN while in China. Over the past decade, BlackRock has entered the China market in a high-profile manner, but they're now exiting the market in a low-profile fashion. On September 7, 2015, BlackRock announced its interest in commercial real estate in China. In 2021, BlackRock became the first global asset manager to operate a wholly owned mutual fund business in China. It has advised investors to triple their asset allocation to China. But the move was even criticized by George Soros. In a Wall Street Journal editorial, he criticized BlackRock's expanded investment in China as a tragic mistake that misjudged China's political and economic situation. In addition to jeopardizing U.S. security, it will also lead to financial losses for investors. Soros said that BlackRock's managers should have realized that a huge crisis is brewing in China's real estate market. A BlackRock spokesperson at the time responded that the relationship between China and the U.S. was too large and complex of a business relationship to avoid investing. And its CEO, Larry Fink, believed that this was a good time to invest in China. In the philosophy of BlackRock's management, it is recognized that investment activities contribute to the economic connectivity of the world's two largest economies. They believe that globally integrated financial markets provide global corporations and governments with better access to capital and contribute to the growth of the world's economy. But since last year, BlackRock seems to be retreating from the Chinese real estate market. Bloomberg reported in January 2024 that BlackRock wanted to sell a commercial building that it bought in 2018 in a prime location in Shanghai, China, at 70% of its original price. Last September, Bloomberg reported that BlackRock has decided to avoid expanding its investment in China's real estate sector unless supply and demand stabilizes and investor confidence rebounds. However, BlackRock still holds shares in a number of major Chinese companies. At the end of last year, BlackRock even upgraded its rating on Chinese stocks from neutral to outperform. A recent investigation by the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS, found that a federally funded organ donation group approved donations from patients who were still showing signs of life. The Health Resources and Services Administration, or HRSA, which is part of HHS, investigated the organization's conduct and found disturbing practices by a major organ procurement organization and clear negligence. So, the HHS has announced a major reform to the organ transplant system. In a statement, HHS said the organ procurement organizations that coordinate access to transplants will be held accountable. The entire system must be fixed to ensure that every potential donor's life is treated with the sanctity it deserves. HRSA examined 351 cases where organ donation was authorized but ultimately not completed. It found 103 cases that showed concerning features, including 73 patients with neurological signs that are incompatible with organ donation. It also found at least 28 patients who may not have been deceased at the time the organ procurement was initiated, which raised serious ethical and legal questions. According to HRSA, evidence indicated poor neurological assessments, lack of coordination with medical teams, questionable consent practices, and misclassification of causes of death, particularly in overdose cases. HRSA also found that small and rural hospitals had the most vulnerabilities, which revealed major gaps in oversight and accountability. So in response to these findings, HRSA has mandated strict corrective actions for the organ procurement organization and system-level changes in order to safeguard potential organ donors nationally. HRSA also ordered the organ procurement organization to fully investigate why it failed to follow its own rules, especially not waiting 5 minutes after the patient's death in order to create clear, enforceable policies for deciding who is eligible to be a donor. The HRSA also requested the organ procurement organization to put a formal procedure in place so any staff member can stop the donation process if they are concerned about the patient's safety. That means that they're finally taking steps to fix what RFK Jr. called a horrifying issue. This move is important because in the United States, people voluntarily sign up to be organ donors. This means their organs can only be donated after death. So it's essential to ensure that no organs are taken prematurely while someone is still alive. This is a serious issue. The United States wants to make sure it never adopts practices seen in China, where the CCP has been harvesting organs from prisoners and religious believers who are still healthy and alive. Back in May, the House passed a bill to punish anyone involved in forced organ harvesting in China. A tribunal found that the CCP has been taking organs from prisoners of conscience, mostly Falun Gong practitioners. In 2019, the China Tribunal was held. This was an independent tribunal into forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience in China. The tribunal was initiated by a coalition of lawyers, academics, ethicists, medical professionals, researchers, and human rights advocates, and it was headed by Sir Geoffrey Nice in London, England. On June 17, 2019, the tribunal concluded that there was evidence of forced organ harvesting since there were extraordinarily short waiting lines for people to get transplants, since there was documented torture of Falun Gong and Uyghurs in China, and since China does not have an organ donation program. Therefore, the China Tribunal concluded that forced organ harvesting has been committed for years throughout China on a significant scale, and that Falun Gong practitioners have been one and probably the main source of organ supply. The judgment also stated, the tribunal notes that forced organ harvesting is of unmatched wickedness, even compared on a death-for-death basis with the killings by mass crimes committed in the last century. There is justifiable belief in the minds of some or many, rising to probability or high probability, that genocide has been committed. In line with this, and by considering the evidence and the law, there can be no doubt that there is a duty on those who have the power to institute investigations for and proceedings at international courts or at the UN to test whether genocide has been committed. Two Canadian lawyers originally broke this case after doing an exhaustive study. David Kilgour and David Matas spent years researching this most egregious crime against humanity. David Kilgour, who was a former member of the Canadian Parliament, gave the last 10 years of his life raising awareness around the world about forced organ harvesting of Falun Gong practitioners in China. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a spiritual practice that encourages practitioners to live by the core principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. It was first introduced to the public in 1992, and it grew quickly. Official estimates indicate that at least 70 million people had picked up the practice in China by 1999, but the CCP viewed the growing popularity of Falun Gong as a challenge to its authoritarian rule, so the CCP responded by launching a brutal persecution campaign, which continues to this day. And that's a wrap for this episode. Thank you so much for your support of Front Page. Please remember to leave a comment below the video. This is really helping us to be seen all around the world. The more people who watch Front Page, the more freedom-loving people the world will have. And please hit the like button and hit the notification bell after subscribing. And please share this video with your friends and family, because everybody deserves to know the truth.